"Grandma, I'll die if we don't leave," Noah whispered, his voice trembling so hard I could hear every beat of his tiny heart. That simple sentence from a 7-year-old hit me like a punch to the chest, placing me right in the center of a danger no one else could sense, right in the middle of an elegant ballroom bathed in warm candlelight, with soft jazz music floating and cheerful laughter echoing all around. I hadn't even reacted when the boy gripped my hand tighter and whispered again, almost inaudibly, a sentence that sent a chill down my spine. "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" The amber glow of the candles danced across sparkling crystal glasses, white roses arranged meticulously on every table, tablecloths as pristine as snow. Everything looked perfect, cozy, the kind of celebration anyone would think was filled with happiness. But beneath the table, a tiny folded piece of paper waited, harboring a cruel plan only Noah and I could sense. The hurried handwriting, slanted and smeared with tears that had fallen from the boy's trembling hand, read, "Table 5 add shrimp to kids' plate. Bride's request." Every word stabbed into my chest like a cold blade. Noah was severely allergic to shrimp. Just a small bite could trigger anaphylaxis, stealing his breath within minutes. I looked across the room and saw my son Daniel, still smiling brightly, toasting with the bride, Brianna. Her lips curved in a flawless smile, her eyes sparkling under the candlelight, and that was when I realized the horrifying truth. They had no idea the danger lurking right under my grandson's table. A wave of cold spread through my body, cutting through the glamour of the wedding. Every glass, every laugh, every note of music became distant, hollow. The world shrank until there were only 3 people left in it, me, Noah, and that deadly note in my hand. I squeezed his tiny fingers, trying to stay calm, but my trembling hands and racing heart reminded me that 1 second of hesitation could mean it was too late. Beside me, Graceme's adopted daughter, the one I'd trusted like my own blood, noticed the panic in my eyes, leaned closer, and pulled Noah into her arms. I whispered, my voice shaking but firm, "Keep him here. Don't let anyone bring food to this table." Noah pressed closer to her, trembling all over, his wide eyes fixed on me with absolute trust. Every other thing, Daniel's smile, Brianna's perfect laughter, the glow of the lights, became meaningless. I drew a deep breath, forcing my mind to focus. Daniel was moving between tables, raising his glass to guests, that radiant smile of his trying to erase 4 years of family grief since Elena Noah's mother had passed away. Brianna stood a few tables away, still smiling beautifully, eyes bright, showing no sign of suspicion or malice. But I knew within a minute that smile would no longer be innocent. It was a mask, hiding something vile. The warmth and opulence of the ballroom only magnified the cruelty of it all. A deadly plot hidden in plain sight at my grandson's dinner table. I bent down, candlelight flickering beneath the table, and picked up the note, my heart pounding wildly. In that instant, every sound of the jazz faded, and the laughter melted into the rhythm of my heartbeat. I moved through the tables, each step heavy, the paper burning in my hand, reminding me that what I did next would decide between life and death. Noah clung to Grace, his eyes following me in silent pleading, as if his very life rested in the trembling hands of this older woman. I inhaled deeply, trying to steady my voice as I whispered to him, "Don't be afraid, my love, Grandma's here." His eyes, desperate yet full of faith, met mine, and I knew in that moment that I had to do whatever it took, right there, in the middle of a glittering wedding full of indifference, make sure no tear from my grandson would ever fall in vain. I turned to Grace, eyes filled with resolve. She understood instantly, wrapping her arms around Noah tighter, like a living shield protecting him. I could feel the trembling heartbeat of the boy through her arms. If I hesitated now, everything would be lost. I straightened up, the world shrinking again to just 3 of us, me, Noah, and that lethal piece of paper. I knew that my next move would shatter the perfect illusion hiding the cruelty beneath. The lights still glowed, the music still played, the laughter still sparkled, but inside me, everything had fallen into a deadly silence. This was the moment that defined the night, which would not let my grandson become a victim. If you're watching this story, hit like and subscribe to follow the whole journey from the peaceful years Noah had with his mother to the night this cruel plan was uncovered. and to the moment emotional justice was restored. Tell me where you're watching from, because this story isn't just every moment, every decision an adult makes can save a child's life. And tonight, I'll show you how we stood up to protect love, faith, and the very breath of my grandson. I still remember vividly the first days of Noah's life, when he was tiny, just learning to take his first steps inside that small house on the outskirts of Savannah. It wasn't grand or luxurious, but it was so warm that every time I opened the door, the scent of baked bread and freshly brewed coffee blended with the aroma of oak wood and flowers by the window made me feel an indescribable peace. Elena, Daniel's first wife, always greeted me with that gentle smile, sparkling eyes, and her soft voice saying, "Mama Helen, please try the soup I just made." A simple sentence, yet filled with pride and love. I would smile, sit down at the table, and watch the little boy giggle, feeling as if the entire world had shrunk into that cozy kitchen. Noah was only 4 back then, his tiny hands often clutching his mother's dress as they walked around the backyard, where magnolia trees cast their shade in the morning light. I still remember those breezy afternoons, laughter filling the air as Noah chased a colorful rubber ball, and Elena sat on the porch, her hands busy with a basket of freshly picked vegetables. Still, her eyes were always following her son, a smile never leaving her lips. "Mama Helen, taste this salsa I just made. See if he likes it," Elena said, her voice bright with excitement, her eyes gleaming with pride. I sat there, eating, talking with her about little things, while Noah crawled on the floor, gripping his old toy car that he adored. But deep inside, I already knew how fragile that happiness was. Noah was allergic to shrimp, and we had to be cautious about every single detail. I remember once, when Noah was taken to a seafood restaurant on Tybee Island, his eyes lit up at the colorful dishes, but just one tiny bite of shrimp made his face swell, his breath tighten, his lips turn blue. I rushed to hold him tight, pressing his heart against mine, while Elena hugged me and cried silently, as if we had both just lived through a real nightmare. The doctor warned us clearly, from now on, absolutely no seafood for him. From that moment on, every meal, every dinner, I made sure to double-check every dish for Noah, whether at home or outside. Time passed quickly. Noah grew up curious and bright, but the shadow of losing his mother always followed him. Elena, that kind-hearted mother who cared for every meal, every bedtime story, every breath her son took, had made me her inseparable ally. She once said, "Mama Helen, no one understands Noah like you. I trust that you'll always be there for him, to keep him safe." I listened, nodded, and took a deep breath, feeling the heavy responsibility on my shoulders to protect the child who had lost his mother, to shield that little heart from breaking again. One memory I will never forget is the night Noah had a high fever. The little boy was weak, his eyes dull, his body burning up, too exhausted to even cry. Elena held him, tears streaming down her face, trembling. "Mom, I'm so scared." I sat beside her, rolling a damp cloth across his forehead, whispering to myself, "My boy, you'll be okay. We won't leave you." We took turns staying awake until morning, and when the first sunlight slipped through the window, Noah finally fell asleep in his mother's arms. Elena turned to me, her eyes red but smiling through the fatigue. "Thank you, Mama Helen. I don't know what I would do without you." I held her hand tightly, silently promising that I would always be there for her and for Noah no matter what. Those peaceful days went by, but I could always feel how fragile happiness truly was. After Elena's death, Daniel buried himself in work, trying to fill the emptiness in his heart with construction projects, long business trips, and only came home after Noah was asleep. I was the only one left to fill the emotional void, taking Noah to school, telling bedtime stories and making sure he still felt safe and loved. "Grandma, tell me a story about Mommy," Noah would ask, his small voice hesitant but full of trust. I would tell him everything about Elena, from the way she sang lullabies to how she cut fruit into funny shapes, trying to keep his mother alive in his memory. Grace, my adopted daughter, became an essential part of what was left of our family. She loved Noah like a little brother, helped him draw, played with him, taught him words, and even molded little fruit shapes by hand to decorate his meals. "Noah, look, your house looks prettier than mine," she'd say, her voice sweet like a bell, and my heart would feel light again. But deep down, I sometimes saw her eyes glance toward Danielin, an expression of both worry and sorrow. I knew Grace cared, but I never mentioned it. I chose silence, afraid that even one word could shatter the delicate balance we had built. Daniel's house grew quieter over time, but thanks to Noah and Grace, the warmth of family still flickered faintly. Even the short weekly visits kept me standing strong, but I knew, inside, both Daniel and I carried wounds that hadn't healed. The loss of Elena remained raw. Every time I looked at Noah sleeping, I saw his mother's face reflected, and my heart ached. Remembering those afternoons when the wind rustled through the yard, Noah's laughter and Elena's tender gaze, I realized something: true love gives strength, but loss leaves scars that never fade. Those memories, those peaceful years, were wrapped up in meals, in laughter, in the meticulous care given to Noah. I remember the taco nights Elena and I prepared together, the times I taught Noah to hold a spoon, each slice of fruit carefully cut, every glass of warm milk served with love. Every detail, every gesture was a thread that bound us together, reminding me that love and attention, promises, or status are the true foundations of family. And it was those very memories that made me feel more anxious than ever when I first saw the future bride walk into the house with her perfect smile, pale blue dress, and eyes that drifted toward the framed photo of Elena holding Noah that I'd hung on the wall. I felt a chill sweep through me, a cold warning that not everyone we call family has their heart in the right place. That night, when Daniel introduced Brianna, I tried to open my heart, to accept her as a new part of the family. But the instinct of someone who has lived through great loss is never wrong. And I knew that those happy afternoons with Elena and Noah would serve as the standard by which I would recognize danger the moment it appeared, awareness I would soon have to rely on during that wedding night when the cruel plan would be revealed, and I would have to act to save my grandson. After what felt like endless peaceful months, everything began to tilt the moment Brianna entered Daniel and Noah's lives. The first evening she came to our house, the room was bathed in soft golden light, cinnamon candles flickered, and the dinner table was filled with Noah's favorite dishes, which tried to open my heart to her. Brianna appeared in a pale blue dress, her hair perfectly styled, her smile flawless, and her voice gentle yet so measured it felt like there was a veil hiding something behind it. She looked at the photo of Elena holding Noah on the wall, her gaze lingering a little too long, and I felt a sudden chill in my chest, mother's intuition sharpened by years of sleepless nights caring for her family. She started a conversation with Noah, handing him an expensive chocolate bar with a bright smile. "Noah, try this. It's delicious." But the boy only looked at her, turned away, and clung to Grace. Watching that, my heart twisted. Any ordinary child would have accepted the candy, smiling happily, but not Noah. His eyes lit up only when he looked at Grace, and that light told me he had sensed something wrong about the new bride, the first signal of the scheme I would soon need to watch closely. Daniel stood beside her, proud, his eyes shining with joy. "Mom, Brianna works in marketing at my company. She's excellent at what she does," he said, his voice filled with admiration. I smiled, nodded, keeping my composure, but inside, my intuition refused to settle. Brianna's smile was too perfect, her gestures too deliberate. I began paying attention to every small detail, from the way she tilted her head when speaking to Daniel, to how she placed her hand near Noah's shoulder without actually touching him, as if avoiding something. The next day, when Daniel was at work, Brianna offered to take Noah to the nearby park. I looked at Noah, who was playing quietly with his wooden blocks, his face blank. I hesitated, then nodded. Of course, he would love some fresh air. But my heart felt heavy, sensing a silent storm forming on the horizon. When they returned, Noah was quiet, his clothes dirty, his eyes avoiding hers. Brianna spoke excitedly. He had so much fun. Went down the slide again and again, and asked for another ice cream. I nodded politely, but inside, a fragment of suspicion took root. Why wasn't Noah smiling? Why was he avoiding her gaze? A small detail, but enough for me to take note. A few days later, as I was preparing lunch, Brianna appeared unexpectedly, her tone cheerful. "Mrs. Helen, I brought some ingredients for the chili. Maybe we can cook together?" Her voice was sweet, but there was a flicker of tension in her eyes. Noah, playing nearby, suddenly stood up, trembling, and tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, I don't want to stay with her." I stopped, looking straight into his clear eyes. He didn't say more, but the message was unmistakable. The bride didn't make him feel safe, and Noah had already sensed it. I chose restraint, still smiling. "It's okay, sweetheart. Let's talk later." But my heart knew this was no longer just suspicion. Brianna, no matter how perfect she appeared, was showing subtle but telling contradictions. She treated Noah like an inconvenience, her soft words edged with cold sharpness when no one else could hear. "Stay still, don't mess up. You're a big boy now. Act accordingly." I stood frozen, feeling the chill that seeped through the kitchen door, realizing that these seemingly harmless details carried real danger. One afternoon, while Daniel was away, I went to pick Noah up from school. The teacher pulled me aside and whispered, "Mrs. Helen, lately Noah seems more withdrawn. He refuses to engage like before. I think something might be troubling him at home." I took a deep breath, forcing a smile. "It's just the changes, don't worry." But on the way home, Noah gripped my hand, his small voice trembling. "Grandma, I don't want to go home with Miss Brianna." I knelt, looking into his eyes, feeling an ache pierce straight through me. "Why, my love? She cares about you." Noah shook his head, his gaze serious, filled with certainty. "No, she doesn't love me." A simple sentence, but it sliced through me like a cold knife. Grace stood beside us, witnessing everything. She stayed silent, but her eyes said it all. "Protect Noah. Stand by the truth. Don't let anyone hurt that boy." Every clue, every subtle gesture, averted glances, the faintly cutting tone, the patient yet detached demeanor pieced together into a pattern of suspicion. I realized this wasn't just a case of a new stepmother not used to children, but a calculated strategy, targeting a child still grieving his mother's loss. That night, I sat in my chair, watching Noah play with his wooden blocks as candlelight danced across the floor, feeling the storm of emotions rise: fear, anger, and resolve. I knew one thing for certain: if I didn't stay alert and prepare, the upcoming wedding night could turn into a nightmare. Every small gesture, every move Brianna made was a warning sign, and I had to watch her like a soldier on guard, ready to protect the boy. Those subtle signals, once invisible, now burned bright in my mind. The way her eyes lingered on the photo of Elena and Noah, the delicate but cold gestures toward him, the emphasis she placed on her own success and reputation in front of Daniel, all of it put me on high alert. I whispered to myself, "Whatever happens on that wedding night, I will not let my grandson become a victim. I've seen enough. I've recognized the plan before it unfolds." And if you're following this story, hit like and subscribe to see how a grandmother prepares every step, from the earliest warning signs, to protect her grandson's life. Let this story remind you that sometimes, just one glance or one small act is enough to reveal a cruel truth, and that timely action can save a life. After the first tense weeks, the signs of suspicion became unmistakable. Every time Noah fell silent, every time his eyes avoided Brianna's, every time she tried to win him over with food or games, I could feel the artificial layer she had built. I no longer doubted this was a calculated plan aimed directly at the boy, and I had to act. One afternoon, while Daniel was away on a business trip, Brianna took Noah to the park near our house without telling anyone. I stood by the window, watching the boy holding her hand, but his eyes were cold, cautious, completely different from his usual excitement. When they returned, Noah was quiet, his clothes dirty, still clutching the old wooden block he loved. I knelt and asked gently, "Did you have fun, Noah?" He only raised an eyebrow, shook his head, and looked at me with eyes so clear yet filled with silent pleading. "Grandma, she's not nice." I took a deep breath, the ache in my chest telling me it was time to find proof. I began paying attention to every small detail, how Brianna emphasized her perfection to Daniel, how her eyes briefly lingered on the photo of Elena and Noah, the supposedly harmless just jokes that carried a cold edge every time she told the boy to stay quiet, stand still, or controlled what he ate. I remembered every movement, every glance, and realized that these seemingly trivial details formed a frightening picture of an unfolding scheme. One day, while preparing lunch, I noticed Noah refusing to eat the meal Brianna had cooked herself. He simply shook his head, turned away, and gripped Grace's hand tightly. I observed quietly, and when the bride leaned down toward him with her honest smile but motionless hands, I knew her care was nothing but a mask. My heart clenched. The plan wasn't just to test his patience. It was about control, maybe even a threat to his life. As Daniel's wedding day approached, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I contacted David, a young waiter I once knew, asking him to help watch the banquet tables and monitor what food was served to Noah. I left nothing unchecked: shrimp dish, every unfamiliar plate, every movement of Brianna and the catering staff. I carefully took notes, compared, and connected every clue to form a clear picture of the danger. One day, when David accidentally dropped a folded note while carrying food, I picked it up and read it. The handwriting was hurried, crumpled. Add shrimp to table 5 kids' plate, bride's instructions. My whole body froze. This wasn't a mistake. It was undeniable proof of Brianna's plan, a plot targeting Noah right in the middle of what everyone believed was a joyous wedding. I trembled, but there was no room for fear. I had to act. I called Noah to my side, holding his hand, looking deep into his eyes. "You don't have to be afraid, sweetheart. I've seen everything. We won't let this happen." The boy leaned against me, trembling but with a flicker of absolute trust in his eyes. I knew then that I had to protect him while preparing to expose the truth in front of everyone. I made a plan: observe, gather evidence, connect every detail, and prepare for a public confrontation. I asked Grace to stay close to Noah, to keep him safe, while I continued to collect every clue, every secret glance, every dish delivered to the table, every whispered word I overheard. Everything became part of a map, a detailed picture of the plot, with Noah at the center, one I had to protect at all costs. In the following days, I continued to watch Brianna's every move, how she flaunted her reputation, how she placed her hand on Daniel without ever showing true care for Noah, how her gestures seemed to control the boy. I began recording details, both to prepare for confrontation and to protect Noah if things spun out of control. I felt like a silent warrior standing between peace and danger, but I couldn't afford to retreat. The tension grew heavier each day, but with it came an unshakable determination. If I didn't act, Noah could become the first and only victim on that wedding night. I remembered Elena, those peaceful afternoons with her, the nights we stayed awake tending Noah's fever, how we protected him every second. All of it had prepared me for this moment, to face this danger head-on. Finally, when the wedding night arrived, everything was ready. The folded note as evidence, David knowing exactly what to do, Grace beside Noah at all times, and ready to expose the truth. I knew this moment would determine the boy's survival, and, at the same time, mark the beginning of emotional justice. And if you're following this story, hit like and subscribe to witness the full journey from suspicion to gathering evidence, to the moment of confrontation, a grandmother, a child, and a family rise together to protect truth, justice, and life itself. This isn't just my family's story. It's a reminder that sometimes one glance or one timely action can save a life. Daniel's wedding day arrived, with the golden sunset streaming through the tall glass windows, filling the riverfront hall with soft amber light that glimmered on every wine glass, every white rose, and every crystal ornament. The wedding appeared flawless, elegant, and warm, yet inside me a storm was raging, and I knew the moment of confrontation had come. Noah, sitting beside me, still clutched his wooden block, his anxious eyes fixed on me, completely trusting that I would protect him. Grace sat across from us, holding the boy's hand, her gaze following Brianna's every move. Watching Daniel raise his glass to toast the guests, his face radiant with happiness, my heart ached. My son still hadn't realized the calculated plan aimed at Noah, and the perfect bride on the surface was testing both patience and a child's fragile life. Step by step, I walked toward table 5, my heartbeat pounding, but my voice calm as I raised the folded note. Before anyone starts eating, I need to clarify something. Everything went silent. The music stopped as if cut off, laughter and chatter vanished, and all eyes turned toward our table. Noah leaned close to me, his small hands clenched, his wide eyes filled with worry. Grace bent slightly, wrapping her arms around him, her eyes burning with resolve. I took a deep breath and emphasized each word. Who wrote this note asking for shrimp to be added to a child's plate at this table? The room froze. Daniel looked at me, startled, his smile fading. Brianna stepped back, her lips twitching into a nervous smile, fear flashing in her eyes. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a spreading wave. Curious stares began to turn toward the flawless bride. I felt Noah's heartbeat quicken. He pressed against me, eyes pleading, and I knew there was no time to hesitate. Holding the note tightly, I spoke firmly, though my voice trembled. My grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. A single piece could be fatal. This is not a joke. This is an attempt to harm a child. The silence was so deep that I could hear my own heartbeat. Guests gasped. Some began murmuring, their eyes darting toward Brianna in disbelief. She forced a smile, but it was cracking, her hands shaking, her mask of perfection beginning to crumble. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and confused. "Mom, what does this mean?" I placed the note on the table, sliding it toward him. "Read it yourself." His eyes scanned the writing, his face drained of color, his hand trembling. Brianna stepped forward with a forced sweetness. "Excuse me, Mrs. Helen. This must be some misunderstanding. Are you really going to believe a story made up by a child?" But I knew the lie had already unraveled. I steadied my voice, calm yet unwavering. This is not a story. It's written proof. Someone intended to harm Noah. And if anyone here tries to hurt my grandson, they will never set foot in this family again. My voice cut through the hall, clear and final, like an unchallengeable verdict. The guests' expressions shifted from curiosity to shock. Every eye was now fixed on Brianna. In that moment, Grace stepped forward, clutching Noah tightly, her tone icy. "If you keep denying it, we can check the security cameras. Everything will be clear in an instant." Her words struck like a stone into still water. Brianna's face went pale, her lips pressed tight as she looked for a way out, but there was nowhere left to run. Then Gloria, the bride's younger sister, burst into tears and stood up. "I didn't know what was inside. She asked me to give it to the waiter." Gloria's confession cut through the illusion like a blade, and this time everyone saw the truth. I felt a wave of relief inside me as justice began to take shape. Noah clung to Grace, his wide eyes still unable to process what was unfolding. Daniel stood frozen, torn between love for Brianna and the truth unraveling before him. I stepped closer, my tone firm but calm. "Noah is safe now. This false happiness ends here." Guests began to rise, murmuring in shock. Some shook their heads, voices filled with disbelief and pity. How could someone be so cruel? I stood still, looking at Brianna, my gaze unyielding like steel. She had lost. No one protected her false smile anymore. No one believed in the perfection she had staged. I felt the power return to my hands, the power to protect, to expose the truth, and to keep Noah safe. Brianna finally broke down in tears, but I knew it wasn't remorse. It was fear of being exposed. Daniel knelt before Noah, his voice breaking. "Son, forgive me. I should have protected you." I placed a hand on his shoulder, silently reminding myself that we were lucky the plan had been uncovered in time. The guests still watched, but now their eyes were filled with respect for those who stood up for the truth. And if you're watching this story, hit like and subscribe to see the full journey from suspicion to gathering evidence to this moment of confrontation where a grandmother, a child, and a family stand together for justice, truth, and life itself. This isn't just my family's story, it's a reminder that sometimes a single timely action can save a life. After the tense confrontation, the hall still shimmered with candlelight and crystal reflections, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Guests were silent, many standing as they watched Brianna being escorted out of the ballroom, their eyes filled with shock and disbelief. I took a deep breath, feeling my heartbeat slowly return to normal as Noah clung to Grace, his eyes still anxious but no longer terrified. For the first time in weeks, I saw the boy truly safe, and a wave of indescribable relief washed over me. Daniel stood nearby, his shoulders trembling, eyes red and glassy. He had never experienced such chaos and humiliation in front of family and friends. When he realized the scheme had been exposed, his eyes filled with tears, part regret, part gratitude. I stepped forward, placed my hand on his shoulder, and said calmly but firmly, "We stopped the worst from happening. Noah is safe." He looked into my eyes, nodded, and tried to smile, but I knew the pain inside him was still raw. Noah, still holding Grace's hand, slowly reached for mine, his eyes regaining a faint glimmer of trust. I bent down, brushed his hair gently, and whispered, "Grandma is here. You are safe now." The boy gave me a tired but trusting smile, and I knew that though emotional scars remained, he had been protected. The next day, our family returned home in silence, but this time it was a peaceful silence, nothing like the suffocating tension of the night before. I began reviewing every detail, every ingredient, every label, every habit of Noah's, to make sure he would never be placed in danger again. Grace stayed close, caring for him through every meal and every bedtime, and I realized that her presence had become an essential part of healing for both Noah and Daniel. We started to rebuild our daily rhythm. Noah went back to school, played with friends, but this time, either Grace or I was always nearby to keep an eye on every little thing. Daniel, still haunted by guilt, spent more time with his son. He took Noah to school, brought him home, and joined him in small but meaningful moments, building wooden castles, reading books, and telling bedtime stories. Gradually, I saw the light return to Noah's eyes. He began to laugh again, though deep down the memory of Elena and the feeling of loss would never fully fade. I too began to rebuild myself. After years of caring for everyone else, I had sacrificed almost all personal time, and now it was time to live a little for myself without ever abandoning my responsibility. I cooked Noah's favorite meals, prepared breakfast before he woke up, and told him stories about Elena so he would always remember his mother, yet feel safe with those who remained beside him. These small acts, seemingly ordinary, became the foundation of our healing. Lucy, my adopted daughter, became the second light of the family. She cared for Noah like a mother, preparing lunch carefully, noting every allergy, and drawing smiley faces on his lunchbox. They seemed like tiny gestures, but when Noah opened that box and saw the drawings, his eyes lit up and his laughter returned. In the afternoons, she took him to the park, flew kites with him, showed him how to hold the string so it would soar, wiped the dirt off his clothes when he fell, acted filled with love, helping Noah rebuild his trust in adults. I watched from a distance and noticed Daniel's eyes often lingered on Lucy with gratitude and remorse. He realized that while he had been too busy running from pain, Lucy had become the true anchor for Noah. I knew then that family isn't only built by blood or ceremonies, but by action, care, and the relentless will to protect. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Noah suddenly looked at Lucy and said in a quiet but steady voice, "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy." A simple sentence, yet it carried the weight of everything we'd been through. I looked at Daniel. His eyes were red, his smile bittersweet. Our scars had never vanished, but light had begun to seep through the cracks. Our family, though changed, had found a new way to be whole. I realized that emotional justice isn't just about exposing the truth or punishing those who harm. It's about the ability to rise, to protect those you love, and to rebuild life on the foundation of compassion and trust. Watching Noah play and laugh with Lucy, I felt that the past no longer ruled our lives. That night, as Noah slept, I sat by the window, watching the moonlight stretch across the quiet street. The darkest days were behind us, and though the past remained, the light of love and care illuminated the path ahead. I whispered to myself, family isn't always born from blood. Sometimes, it's chosen to be built with love, courage, and the will to protect each other from the dark. In the days that followed, Daniel learned to slow down, to be present for Noah truly, and to rebuild his relationship with Grace and me. Lucy remained Noah's steady source of comfort, and together we rebuilt our lives, cooking, playing, studying, and sharing the laughter we once missed. I understood then that happiness doesn't come from luxury or grand gestures, but from sincerity, love, and the willingness to stand by one another in the moments that matter most. I realized that every small act, every bit of care, becomes emotional justice and the power of healing, not only for Noah, but for the entire family. And if you're watching this story, hit like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. Every act of care, every moment of protection, no matter how small, can change a child's life, and this story stands as proof that love, justice, and courage will always conquer the darkness. After the horrifying incident at the wedding, our family's rhythm slowly returned to order, though it would never be the same again. Noah remained at the center of every action and decision. I observed every small way he held a spoon, lifted his glass, or paid attention to his food. Everything was monitored carefully, not a single moment went unnoticed. I still cooked all his favorite meals, from cheesy pasta to soft pudding, making sure there was no trace of anything that could trigger his allergy. Lucy, my adopted daughter, became our irreplaceable emotional anchor. Every morning, she prepared Noah's lunch, carefully choosing each ingredient, even drawing little smiling faces on notes for his teacher, reminding them about his allergies. When Noah opened his lunchbox, his eyes lit up, and a smile appeared. His laughter, bright and pure, was a medicine that healed us all. In the days that followed, Daniel learned to slow down. He took Noah to school, brought him home, played with him, and told bedtime stories. Gradually, the light returned to the boy's eyes. Each afternoon, I watched Noah run across the yard, his laughter echoing through the house, and for the first time in months, peace filled my heart. Our family, though not perfect, had found its rhythm again, and I realized happiness doesn't come from rituals or grand ceremonies, but from genuine care, love, and devotion. One Sunday afternoon, sunlight streamed through the living room window. I sat on the sofa, knitting needles in hand, watching Noah and Lucy fly a kite in the backyard. The boy laughed joyfully, his eyes sparkling each time the string pulled tight, and I felt my heart lighten. Lucy guided him on how to hold the string, steer the kite upward, and clean the dirt from his clothes when he fell, movement filled with love. Noah's eyes gleamed with the pure belief that he was completely safe, and I knew that light had returned to his soul. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Noah looked at Lucy and said softly but clearly, "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy." A simple sentence, yet heavy with meaning. I looked at Daniel, his eyes red, his shoulders trembling, but a bittersweet smile crossed his face. We all realized that happiness could be rebuilt just differently, with those who truly loved and protected one another. I found myself thinking about Elena, Noah's mother. The peaceful days, the warm afternoons in the backyard, the laughter, the bedtime stories. Remembering those moments, I understood that it was her love, sacrifice, and gentle care that built the foundation for Noah's safety and joy. And now, with Lucy's presence, those same values lived on not through titles or appearances, but through choice and devotion. Daniel, still grappling with guilt from that wedding night, began to change. He listened to Noah more and cared about the small details of his day. Shared breakfasts, park trips, and story hours before bed all became cherished moments, no longer lost to work or grief. Watching my son, I saw the light slowly return to his eyes, and I knew the healing had begun quietly, but surely. Together, we built new memories. Noah and Lucy played with puzzles, drew pictures, and cooked small meals for each other. These simple, ordinary moments became proof of love's strength and the quiet power of care. I realized that family isn't just about blood, it's about choice, about the people willing to sacrifice, protect, and love unconditionally. One quiet night, as Noah slept, I sat by the living room window, watching the moonlight stretch across the quiet street. I realized that the scars from deceit and loss would always remain, but the light of love, care, and trust had found its way back, illuminating our path forward. I whispered to myself that true happiness doesn't come from rituals, elegant dresses, or titles, but comes from genuine kindness, compassion, and the courage to protect one another. Day by day, Noah returned to his world of joy, learning, and most importantly, trust. Daniel was no longer absent from his son's milestones. Grace still watched over him with care. Lucy became his flame, the source of love he always looked toward. I understood then that choosing your family is one of life's greatest decisions through blood, but through love, sacrifice, and trust. I realized that emotional justice isn't just about exposing wrongdoing, it's about standing up for those you love, rebuilding life upon love and safety. With Lucy's presence and my unwavering care, Noah regained his faith in people, and the light returned to his eyes. Daniel, though flawed, learned to listen, to cherish, and to nurture what he still had. And if you're watching this story, hit like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. Remember, sometimes a single act of care, a single protective decision, can change a child's life, and that love, sacrifice, and courage will always be the light that guides us through the darkest days. In the weeks following the horrifying wedding night, we thought everything had finally settled, but that peace was only temporary. Noah returned to school, played with friends, and his eyes began to shine again. Yet I remained cautious. After months of observing Brianna, I had learned that danger isn't always visible and can hide within the most ordinary details. One morning, while preparing breakfast, Noah stood beside me, his eyes bright yet slightly hesitant. "Grandma, why didn't she come yesterday?" He was asking about Brianna, a simple question, but it struck me as a warning. I took a deep breath, patted his shoulder, and said softly, "I don't want you to worry, but sometimes adults have to choose who truly cares about you." Noah fell silent, his gaze lost in thought. I knew he still remembered that wedding night, the fear he felt when he realized the truth behind the plot. I began checking every detail of our daily routine. Who took Noah to school, who cared for him, every meal, every tutoring session. I watched how Daniel paid attention to him, how Lucy stayed close, and how Noah reacted when he sensed genuine care. Every detail was a signal, and I took note of them all. One afternoon, while Noah was playing with building blocks alongside Lucy, he suddenly looked at me with a serious expression. "Grandma, what if someone tries to trick me again?" The boy was only 7, yet his eyes carried the weight of deep caution. I knelt beside him, looked into his eyes, and said, "Noah, I'll always be here. But remember, no one has the right to hurt you, and you can always speak up when you feel unsafe." He nodded, but I knew that for the first time in his life, Noah had learned how to recognize danger and protect himself. Daniel, though remorseful for what had happened, still didn't fully grasp the depth of this challenge. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, he mentioned Brianna offhandedly, his tone distracted. "She tried so hard." Noah looked up, stayed silent, then turned away, his eyes bright but distant. I realized that he was still sensitive to any mention of her, and this was a lesson I had to teach the entire family. Trust must be rebuilt step by step, and no one should ever dismiss a child's sense of safety. In the days that followed, small challenges continued to arise, visiting guests bringing unfamiliar dishes, Noah's curious gaze shifting instantly to suspicion. Grace stood by his side, always shielding him, and I understood the power of presence as a quiet form of protection that mattered deeply. These small moments taught us all that rebuilding trust is a slow, essential process. I began creating a new plan for our family: evening storytelling sessions for Noah, teaching him how to recognize danger, and maintaining closeness with Grace and Lucy. We played in the yard together, read books, and talked about past fears and worries. Noah started to understand that not all adults are trustworthy. He had the right to choose who truly loved him. One evening, as he sat drawing, Noah looked up at me, his eyes shimmering. "Grandma, I want to be brave like you." The simple words made my heart tighten. I smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're already brave, my love, and I'll always help you grow stronger." That moment marked a turning point, the beginning of his emotional maturity and his ability to protect himself. More small challenges appeared in daily life. Noah sometimes avoided new foods, stayed wary of strangers, and slowly developed awareness through observation. I taught him how to notice danger through gestures, tone, and behavior. He learned to stay cautious without losing his innocence. Lucy became an irreplaceable ally. Every piece of advice, every gentle action, helped Noah understand the difference between genuine love and deceit. Daniel, after observing quietly for some time, began to change as well. He paid attention to Noah's behavior, to every little detail, making sure the boy never felt abandoned or alone. I saw him learning to step into his son's emotions, realizing that responsibility wasn't just about money or work, it was about presence and genuine love. Our family, though still scarred by the past, began to rebuild trust. Noah learned how to recognize deceit, how to see who truly cared for him. With Grace and Lucy by my side, I learned to balance vigilance with peace. Each day brought new challenges, but also new steps toward genuine happiness. And if you're watching this story, hit like and subscribe to follow our journey of rebuilding trust, facing challenges, and protecting those we love. This story is a reminder that sometimes the smallest trials become the greatest lessons, teaching us how to trust again and recognize the actual value of chosen love. Weeks after the wedding, when the family finally seemed at peace, an unexpected event dragged us back into the tension we thought we had left behind. Noah, playing with his wooden blocks on the living room carpet, suddenly looked up at me, his eyes bright yet filled with unease. "Grandma, someone called for me at school today." My chest tightened instantly. The boy never worried about school unless something was wrong. When I arrived to pick him up, his teacher handed me a note and whispered, "Mrs. Helen, Noah refused to eat lunch today, and—" Someone left a note on his tray. I unfolded the paper, and a chill ran down my spine. The handwriting was brief, but malicious. Table 7. Add shrimp to the child's plate. From the new staff. In that moment, I knew one thing. Brianna had not fully withdrawn from her plan, and the danger still lingered in the shadows. On the way home, Noah gripped my hand tightly, his eyes no longer innocent. "Grandma, I don't want to eat there. I don't trust them," he said, his voice trembling but firm. I stroked his hair gently and whispered, "It's okay, my boy. We'll handle this." I knew my duty now wasn't only to protect Noah but to control every surrounding factor that could threaten him. Once home, I immediately gathered Grace and Daniel, recounting every detail. Daniel's eyes were red as he knelt beside Noah. I should have been more careful." I placed a hand on his shoulder, calm but resolute. "Daniel, we've learned from the past. This time, we won't let anyone hurt him." Noah bowed his head, leaning into Grace's arms, his eyes flickering with trust once more. The next day, I decided to personally oversee Noah's lunchtime at school. I packed his food myself, checked every label, every ingredient, and watched every staff member handling the meals. Grace stayed by his side, reminding him softly, "Remember, if something feels wrong, tell me immediately." Noah nodded, his eyes brightening as his confidence began to return. That evening, when Daniel came home, he and I sat down to draft a complete protection plan for Noah. We agreed. No one could offer him food unless it were pre-approved by us. Every caregiver had to report every action, and Grace would always accompany him. It was the only way to ensure he would never face danger again. But the tests kept coming. One afternoon, a former colleague of Brianna's visited, bringing a gift box of cookies for Noah. The boy looked at me, hesitant, afraid to take it. I smiled softly. "It's all right, sweetheart. We'll check it first." When I opened the box, there was a small folded note inside. "Follow the plan, table 7. A surge of anger rose in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Any reckless move could put Noah at risk. Noah clung to me, trembling. "Grandma, I knew something was wrong. I ran my fingers through his hair and whispered, "I know, my boy. I'll protect you, always." His eyes slowly regained their faith, but I knew this moment reminded us that rebuilding safety is a process that doesn't happen overnight. I began documenting every detail, note, every action, every phrase Noah recalled. I realized our life, though steadier now, remained fragile if we didn't stay vigilant. Daniel learned to watch his son closely, paying attention to every subtle expression, finally understanding that protecting a child was not about wealth or comfort but about presence and trust. In the days that followed, this ordeal became an opportunity for growth. Noah learned to observe, to recognize danger, and to strengthen his awareness. Lucy, like a protective flame, stayed by his side, guiding him through every step, creating an environment where he could grow with confidence. In the end, I realized that this new challenge, though frightening, had taught us all to mature. Noah learned to defend himself, Daniel learned to listen and care deeply, and I, with years of experience in safeguarding those I love, had once again become the guide leading our family through the storm. If you're watching this story, hit like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. This is proof that no matter how suddenly challenges arise, vigilance, care, and true love will always help a family endure, protect one another, and build the foundation for emotional justice. One peaceful afternoon, sunlight streamed through the window, casting golden streaks across the wooden floor. I stood in the living room, watching Noah play with Lucy. Everything seemed normal again, yet deep down I knew the challenges weren't over. A note from school, a secret message, and the wary look in Noah's eyes reminded me that Brianna, or someone still following her, might be hiding somewhere waiting for another chance. When Daniel returned from work, I told him every detail. The note, Noah's hesitation, the strange behavior of the cafeteria staff, and the fragments of evidence left over from the wedding night. His eyes filled with tears, his voice trembling. I should have protected him better. I placed my hand on his shoulder, firm and steady. This time, we'll stand strong. No one will ever harm him again. Noah bowed his head, leaning into Grace's arms, his eyes glowing with renewed trust. The next day, we decided to hold a family meeting, inviting everyone involved, Daniel, Grace, Noah, Lucy, and even the catering staff from the previous event, to ensure no detail was overlooked. Holding the evidence in my hand, my heart pounded, but my voice stayed calm. We're going to settle everything today, to make sure Noah is completely safe. Brianna arrived, trying to maintain her composure with a forced smile, but I caught the flicker of fear in her eyes. Daniel looked at her, still torn, not yet fully grasping what I had long understood. I stood tall, gaze sharp, my tone calm yet unyielding. Brianna, here is the evidence. Every action, every word, every note of it points to one thing: a plan to harm Noah. The catering staff stood frozen, eyes darting nervously. Another note was the same one I had collected at the school, clearly reading, Table 7, add shrimp to the child's plate, instructions from the bride. Brianna stepped back, her lips pressed tight, her hands trembling. I continued, my voice cold but firm. If anyone here ever tries to harm my grandson, they will never set foot in this family again. Daniel's face shifted as the truth came into focus. Noah clung to Grace, eyes pleading, while Lucy stood beside them, firm but tense. I knew this moment would decide everything. Justice had to be served, and our family had to be protected. Brianna stammered, "It's a misunderstanding." I didn't know, but her eyes betrayed her. Gloria, her sister, stood up, voice shaking but clear. I did what she told me. I swear I didn't know what was inside. Those words shattered the perfect mask Brianna had worn, exposing the truth completely. The room fell silent, every gaze now fixed on her. I stepped closer to Noah, brushed his hair, and whispered, "Grandma is here. You are safe now." Noah held me tightly, his breathing slowed, his wide eyes filled with calm for the first time in months. Daniel knelt beside him, voice breaking. "Son, forgive me. I should have protected you." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "We were lucky this time. No one will ever hurt him again." Brianna broke into tears, but I knew it wasn't remorse, it was fear. She looked around, realizing there was nowhere left to hide. I spoke firmly, each word a final verdict. Ava is no longer welcome in this family. Anyone who endangers Noah will never be part of this home. The strength in my voice, my gaze, and my resolve drew an invisible line that no one could cross again. The guests around us began to breathe again, sighing in relief, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Daniel turned to Noah, took his small hand, and said softly, "I promise I'll always protect you, my boy." Noah looked up at me, his eyes shining, and for the first time, a pure, innocent smile returned. Lucy stood beside him, her arms wrapped protectively around the boy, her expression firm yet full of love. I knew that this moment marked the true end of the conspiracy and the beginning of a new chapter for our family. The faint sound of jazz music began to play again, but this time it was a melody of trust, safety, and love. Noah ran to Lucy, giggling as she lifted him. Daniel looked at me, eyes filled with gratitude, and I realized that even though our family still carried scars, we were safe now. Emotional justice had finally been served. And if you're watching this story, hit like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. This story stands as proof that courage, vigilance, and true love will always triumph over deceit, protecting those we love, and that emotional justice always finds its way into the light. After the tense confrontation the night before, the atmosphere in our family finally quieted down. Noah, still clinging to Lucy, had light back in his eyes, and a smile slowly returned to his face. Daniel stood nearby, shoulders trembling, his eyes still red but no longer lost. I looked at my son, placed my hand on his shoulder, and said calmly, "It's over now, Daniel. Son, it's time for us to rebuild trust and peace for Noah." The following days became a journey of patience. I watched every gesture of Noah's every glance, every small word. He was still sensitive to people around him. Every tiny detail could trigger caution. But gradually, thanks to Lucy's companionship and Daniel's renewed attention, Noah began to smile again, to play, to recognize the difference between those who truly loved him and the hidden dangers that once haunted him. I cooked his favorite meals, prepared breakfast before he woke, and told him stories about Elena, his mother's, that her presence would live on in his heart. At the same time, I made sure every piece of food and every drink Noah received was carefully checked, no detail overlooked. Grace stayed close by, protecting him step by step, and I realized that her constant presence gave the boy a sense of absolute safety. Daniel, after the shock and guilt of discovering Brianna's plot, began to change completely. He spent more time with Noah, taking him to school, bringing him home, playing, and reading stories together. Slowly, I saw the light return to Daniel's eyes, his smile warmer, though tinged with regret for what had happened. He had learned that responsibility wasn't just about money or work, it was about being present and loving sincerely. Lucy, my adopted daughter, continued to be a pillar of emotional strength for Noah. Every morning, she prepared his lunchbox, wrote detailed allergy notes, and drew smiling faces on the lid. When Noah opened it, his eyes lit up and his smile blossomed again. In the afternoons, she took him to the park, helped him fly kites, showed him how to hold the string, wiped the dirt off his clothes when he fell, whispering, "It's okay, my love, I'm here." Noah's laughter rang through the air, a sound that felt like medicine for all our souls. In the days that followed, our home slowly regained its rhythm. Noah returned to school, played with friends, and studied with focus. Daniel learned to listen and care, gradually repairing his bond with his son. Grace stayed close, reminding and guarding him in every situation. I realized that family isn't built on blood alone, but on love, sacrifice, and trust. One evening, while Noah and Lucy were building blocks on the floor, he looked up at me and said softly, "Grandma, I feel safe now." I smiled, placed my hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "I'm always here, my boy. You've been so brave." His eyes sparkled with trust, and I knew that though the scars of the past remained, light had finally found its way into his heart, bringing peace and happiness. Family dinners became warm and full of laughter. We cooked together, played, told stories, and shared small but meaningful moments. With Lucy's guidance and Daniel's care, Noah learned to trust and love again. Watching my son and grandson from a distance, I realized that patience, courage, and genuine love had carried us through the storm and that our family was slowly being reborn. I understood that emotional justice isn't just about exposing wrongs, it's about standing up, protecting those you love, and rebuilding life on a foundation of safety and love. Noah, with Lucy's support and my presence, had regained his faith in adults, and the light in his eyes had returned. Daniel, though imperfect, had learned to listen, to value sincerity, and to join us in rebuilding what we once lost. And if you're watching this story, please hit like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. This story is proof that after every storm, a family can be reborn through courage, sincere love, and patience. Every act of care, every word of protection, becomes part of the light that guides us through the dark, and emotional justice always finds its way back into our lives. After all the days of tension and worry, my family finally found our way back to peace. Noah ran around the yard, laughter echoing, his eyes bright and innocent again, a sight I thought we had lost forever after that horrifying wedding night. Lucy, like a second mother, stayed by his side, wiping dirt from his clothes when he fell, teaching him simple games filled with joy, and sometimes just whispering, "I'm here, my love." Every gesture of hers didn't just bring safety, but also slowly restored his trust and innocence. Daniel, though still carrying a trace of regret, had learned to slow down, to notice the smallest expressions and gestures of his son, and to be truly present with his family. I watched him, saw the light returning to his eyes, and realized that emotional justice doesn't only come from exposing the truth, but also from learning how to love and protect one another. Each of us in the family came to understand that real happiness is built from care, courage, and genuine love, not from ceremonies or outward appearances. I stood on the balcony, looking down at the yard where Noah was playing with his red kite. He ran and laughed, the glow of the sunset lighting up his radiant face, and my heart softened. Lucy sat on the grass, showing him how to hold the string and guiding his little hands carefully. Those simple, ordinary moments were, to us, living proof of the power of love and the restoration of trust. Watching Noah, I thought of Elena's mother and the peaceful days we once shared, the warm afternoons, the laughter, the bedtime stories. Remembering those moments, I understood that love, care, and patience were what carried him through fear, and now, with Lucy's guidance and my support, the light had returned. In the weeks that followed, our family found proper stability. Noah returned to school, joined activities, and for the first time in months, his eyes no longer carried hesitation or fear. Daniel learned to balance work and family, spending time playing with his son, tending to his meals, and sleeping. I remained the anchor, guiding, protecting, and supporting, while also allowing Daniel and Lucy the space to grow into their own roles. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Noah suddenly looked at Lucy and said softly but clearly, "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy." The simple words carried profound meaning, and my heart swelled with joy. Daniel stood beside him, eyes red but smiling, a bittersweet smile filled with love and relief. We all realized that true happiness doesn't come from wedding dresses or grand ceremonies, but from sincerity, love, sacrifice, and the courage to protect each other. I reminded myself and my family, a family isn't built by blood alone, but by choice and genuine love. Every act of protection, every caring word, no matter how small, forms the foundation for rebirth and lasting happiness. Noah, under Lucy's guidance and my care, learned to trust, to love, and to feel safe again. Daniel, though imperfect, learned to cherish and nurture, rebuilding trust and affection with his son and our family. One quiet night, after Noah had fallen asleep, I sat by the window, watching the moonlight stretch across the empty street. I realized that while the wounds of the past remained, the light of love, care, and courage now illuminated the path ahead. I whispered to myself, "Life sometimes brings losses that can never be replaced, betrayals that break your heart, but sincere love will always be the light that leads you forward." I understood then that starting over isn't just about healing wounds but about choosing to trust again, to protect, and to love the right people. Noah, Daniel, Lucy, and I had all learned that family isn't always defined by blood, but by actions, sacrifice, and the courage to stand by one another. Finally, sunlight filled the house as Noah laughed, Lucy by his side, Daniel joining in the play, and I watched them with a peaceful heart. We had survived, protected one another, and rebuilt our lives on a foundation of trust and love. The scars were still there, but light and hope had claimed our hearts, marking a new chapter of beginning again, of true happiness, and of emotional justice that endures. And if you're watching this story, please like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. Remember, sometimes one small act of care or one brave decision can save a child's life, protect a family, and bring light to the darkest days. Believe me, it is never too late to begin again.